Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm delighted to be joined by James French. And we are here in the aftermath of the most recent transfer window. Something told me it wasn't a good idea to go live last night because I didn't really get the sense that we were going to have anything that was going to put a real kind of smile on our face. It's one of these situations where we brought in a couple of guys during January, James, and the frustration from some fans, not all fans, around the recruitment and the way we've gone about our business in January shouldn't be, for me, like we're targeting the players that have came in, because we're not targeting the players. We're targeting the way we've gone about our business. The fact that we've come out of this transfer window without strengthening in key areas. I said a few weeks back, what happens if Greg Taylor, Carter Vickers, or Kyogo get injured? Well, two of them are. Two of them have been injured. What do you do? What happens when Joe Hart gets injured? We're going into the second half of the season with Scott Bain and Benjamin Siegrist. So over the piece, James, we'll start off with our striker. He was announced late last night. The admin team on the social media channel probably had a day of it because he or she didn't post anything until the very last minute on advice. We are going to be in there at 12:45 in the press conference, albeit via Zoom, to welcome Adam Ida to the club. And that's what you do. You welcome players to the club. We're not having a go at the individual player, James. You've done a bit of digging on that player. What is your take? What does this new striker from Norwich bring to Celtic?
Yeah, listen, Adam Idas would have been kind of a big name in Irish football in circles coming up through the underage systems and stuff. Would have scored, I think, 34 goals in about 64 games underage for Ireland. And I think he's scored 22 goal contributions in the Premier League too in about 30 games, which is obviously the development path for players over in England. So like kind of breaking into senior football at 17, 18, there was a lot of hype around him and a lot of expectation that he'd kind of transitioned to senior football pretty seamlessly. So obviously he's 6'3", he's a big guy, like he's quick, he has some really good physical attributes, like I think over the last number of years he's obviously 20 caps for Ireland, he's hugely experienced at international level. I think he just probably failed to kind of get the goals at senior level that he would have got underage, whether that's kind of Norwich maybe, the way they play. I wouldn't really be too sure on that, but I think it's more that he's just kind of struggled with injuries and stuff, which would have kind of impacted his confidence. Probably a similar situation to Mikey Johnson, like Mikey, all the talent in the world, but kind of injuries and lack of confidence kind of made him lose his way a bit. So I think that's kind of similar situation to Adam Ida, but I think he's probably been getting a lot of flack off fans on social media, probably undeservedly so. I think a lot of the anger is more coming from other positions on the park that we failed to address, and just in general, just like a really poor transfer window. But
really, a series of poor transfer windows, which has built that frustration, James, hasn't it?
yeah, I think that's kind of fair enough. But listen, you just kind of have to. He's obviously come in now, and you just kind of have to back him and hope he can score some goals up here, because he's a hugely talented player. Who kind of may have lost his way over the last number of years, and his stats obviously aren't great, but he's a guy with a lot of talent, and people kind of forget he's still only 22. He's still really, really young. So listen, I think a lot of the frustration and the anger is probably at there was obviously reports about Sidney Van Hooydonk and how he was offered to the club, and the club kind of opted to go for Ida instead, which doesn't make a lot of sense realistically, because I think Norwich went and got Sidney Van Hooydonk with a loan and an option to buy. So they're kind of thinking long term with that signing, and we're kind of just thinking short term with the signing of Ida. And Van Hooydonk's probably a guy, kind of, even if you just ignore his last name, it's probably a guy that's coming in with a bit more pedigree. Obviously, he had his breakthrough year here in the Eredivisie last year, scored a good number of goals, got his move to Bologna in Serie A, and then kind of he's lost his way, but he's struggled for games, which is kind of the exact player profile Celtic should be looking at. Them kind of guys that have got their move, maybe have struggled and need a loan, and we get the minimum loan option to buy, similar how we got Carter Vickers and Jota. So kind of the sign of Sidney Van Hooydonk would have made a lot of sense, even not looking at his last name. It would have made a lot of sense. But listen, I think we've got Ida. The window's obviously closed, and as an Irish person myself, I'm not going to sit here and say he's an absolutely brilliant player, because he's still a good bit of work to do. But I hope he can hit the ground running at Celtic and really get his career back on track.
It's interesting to get your take on that, James, from that perspective of digging into his progression from the underage football and international level through the ranks to the full national team and to the Norwich first team. I think there's a tendency when you're looking at a player who you might not know a great deal about, you look at the kind of base stats and you think, all right, this is one of those non-goal scoring strikers. So it's great to get that level of insight. Jungle Lion comes in as well. I totally agree with this. You cannot blame the player for the board's mismanagement. I want the player to do so well as I do every time someone signs for Celtic. And I think that when you look at the different kind of stature, physical presence of Adam Idah, it starts to make me think, right, and I'm going to come back to this because I've got this chat around Kyogo and Brendan Rodgers. It's something that's been going on, rumbling on Acsom all season long. Kyogo has been our talisman for 2 seasons, and I would actually say for 2.5 seasons, because really it's Kyogo's 2 moments of magic in the games against Rangers that are the reasons for us being top of the league. If you really want to just boil it down to that, everybody going on about his form, he's not playing, or Brendan's not playing to his strengths. Brendan's coming out and saying, I've not told Kyogo to do anything different. We're definitely not playing to his strengths. So I'm now looking at this situation, and Adam Idah, when you look at the physical presence, his aerial prowess, for example, you think to yourself, maybe instead of fine-tuning everything else to suit Kyogo, is Brendan Rodgers saying for the next 6 months we're going to continue to play the same type of ball into the box, and hopefully we're going to have a striker who'll get on the end of it? Is that his thinking? Let us know in the comment section. But as Jungle Lion says, you're not blaming the player. Absolutely not. The frustration over now 4 transfer windows, as I've said in the tagline there, is something that I've been pretty vocal about. I know that a lot of people disagree with that. But one thing I would say, it's not at the individual player. I want him to do well. I want Nicholas Kuhn to do well. And I hope that, the players that have come in are of the quality that Brendan Rodgers has been constantly talking about. If they are, brilliant. I'm not quite sure that was the kind of level that Brendan Rodgers was referring to. On the Sidney Van Hooijdonk thing, I've mentioned this before. We basically asked Pierre, his dad, who is not his agent, but obviously knows exactly what is going on. And he said at that time, Celtic had not been interested. They'd shown no interest. There had been no contact whatsoever. But Sidney had to make a move to try and refresh his career. It hadn't worked out, and he needed a move away. So, yeah, I agree. I think that even with the surname and people saying, Yad Larson, Jordan Larson, or Sidney Van Hooijdonk and Celtic together, it's the box office mix. But actually, when you look at him as a player and what he brings to the table, I think it would have probably been a better signing. However, we're maybe looking at it through the optics of, right, he's now Norwich City's first choice striker. Adam Idah was the third choice striker. We've gone for third choice instead of first choice. We need to wait and see. And as Jungle Lion goes on to say, first 2 comments of the day on YouTube, the young fella might work. He absolutely might work. And if he does, James, after the 6 months, because again, you sometimes look at a loan without that option at the end of it as being short-termism. If it works for Celtic, do you think that could be an option? Do you think we could go back to Norwich? If you did, what kind of fees are we talking for a player like Adam Idah?
Yeah, so Adam Idah would have only signed a new contract last year, 4-year deal. So I think there was talk of a £6 million fee for him, which obviously would have kind of scared away Celtic a bit in terms of it's quite steep for a guy whose record in the Championship is quite poor. So I think bringing Idah is very much short-term solution. I think obviously if he's successful, which is what all Celtic fans will want him to be, that I think a permanent move obviously isn't out of the question in terms of obviously we paid $7.5 million for Jota and Carter Vickers, but I just think he's obviously only signed a new contract last year, so I think a fee for Idah would be quite steep. So yeah, I think it's very much a short-term signing. And just on his, I know you were saying there, I think about Idah being 6'3" and stuff, and is Rodgers wanting a more kind of target man up top. Ida is, in terms of his stats for winning headers and stuff, he's quite poor. Like for a guy that's 6'3", I'd nearly say he's probably better with his feet than he is with his head, even though he is 6'3", just from watching him. But yeah, I think it's definitely a kind of short-term signing.
Short-term signing, short-termism being an issue. I'm looking at 2 transfer windows this season, 11 players in, yet we are still struggling to find a replacement for Greg Taylor at left back. Greg Taylor's on the treatment table. I'm pretty sure they've got more than one, but alongside Cameron Carter-Vickers and Rio Atati. And you ask yourself, right, 11 players in, the 3 guys that are out, have we got players to fill their boots? If not, why not? It's not good enough in terms of the recruitment. And some people might think it's bold. Let us know in the comments, am I being too harsh? Should the last 4 transfer windows spell the end of a recruitment team? Let us know in the comments, just like Paul has. Paul Bunn, welcome to the show. The recruitment team won't be removed by choice. It'll only come via fan pressure and then begrudgingly. Now, I keep going back to the comment that was made to myself. What do you know about recruitment? Okay, I'm not a recruitment specialist, but I spoke, at length yesterday to JP Mason about this, whereby I feel that Celtic should have the best recruitment team in its class. The people within that recruitment team, the head of that recruitment team should be the absolute best at what they do. That's where we are as Celtic Football Club. We can't go out and sign £12 million strikers on Premiership wages, but what we can do is make sure that everything's happening in the back room is done properly and you get the best people in to do it. There is an issue, James, I feel, at the club at the moment, which breeds from nepotism, cronyism, and there's people in jobs that aren't there through ability. Now, I would not have an issue if Peter Lawwell's son, grandson, cousin, whoever it was in a position if they were a spectacular candidate. And I don't think that has been proven by Matt Lawwell, head of recruitment, now for 4 transfer windows. The issue I've got with that is we were in a cycle. And if you just keep the cycle going, then that's great. And then that allows you the luxury of bringing in some players who might just work out at a later date, like Odin Holm, for example, or maybe Yang. And the cycle continues, so you're getting enough quality as well as the prospects in that window. The quality goes right into the team. The prospect might benefit you in 6, 12, 18 months' time. Well, now that cycle has broken. It's gone way off track. And we're now facing a situation where, unless all the signings either pick up or hit the ground running in regards to the 2 new ones, we're going to have a massive, massive rebuild in the summer again. And how on earth do you get to that having won a treble last season, James? That's a huge frustration for me.
Yeah, I think what you're saying about kind of nepotism at the club, for a club the size of Celtic, like we should be just kind of run a lot better than we are in terms of we should have people in the right places that are qualified to do the job. Even Michael Nicholson, I know he was obviously very good when Ange came in. He would have been a lawyer and he's kind of head of football operations. Kind of a lawyer, head of football operations probably doesn't make a lot of sense when you look at it like that. You've obviously got, I only found out during the week, Craig Strachan is head of scouting, I think, was it? And he was manager of a golf shop a few years ago. Mark Law, obviously, I would have actually defended Mark Law when he came in, just because he would have been obviously worked in the City Football Group and he would have had a lot of success kind of taking guys from there, both staff and players. But I think even just kind of forgetting his second name, you judge your head of recruitment on who he's brought in and his track record, and his track record has been absolutely awful. Like, I don't think you can really put it much. I can't really put it much better, to be honest. I think when you're looking back now on Ange and his recruitment, I think Ange probably would have masked a lot of our success we had in the transfer market in terms of obviously the guys that are still there now. We've got guys Maida, Tate, Kyogo, obviously. These are all guys that would have been brought by Ange into the club. I think since then, there has been very little kind of success on the recruitment front. Obviously, the summer transfer window is just kind of an absolute disaster. I know you're talking about project players and stuff, but these guys kind of need to be good enough to come in and do a job now, and then you'll obviously see they have a lot of potential, like obviously Odin Thiago Holm, who he's obviously been inconsistent this season, but you can see from him that he has a lot of potential, and he has the ability to contribute now, where Whereas if you're looking at kind of like a Yang, I would doubt that he's kind of shown enough in games to say he can contribute now. So yeah, I think just as a whole, I think the club needs to have the right people in the right positions, and in particular for a club the size of Celtic, like it's a worldwide brand. I think people forget that, and for a club our size to be run kind of so poorly, it's just really disappointing, and it's hard to kind of put a finger on it. It's kind of madness that the board would kind of rather see us kind of step back rather than evolve, which is just kind of funny, to be honest, that they're so afraid of progress or even attempting to make progress, that they'd rather see the club go backwards, which is mental when you look at it from a fan's point of view.
Yeah.
But yeah, even if you're kind of, I know I don't want to talk about Rangers, but they're obviously our direct challengers at the league at the moment. If you kind of look at what they're doing, they've obviously got a new head of football operations. I don't know his credentials now, but I'm just kind of going off what the news is. That as well as that, they've obviously got a new director of football from PSV Eindhoven, who would have been really successful in the player trading market and kind of have had some brilliant players over the last number of years through their recruitment. And you look at ourselves, still going with Mark Lawwell as head of scouting. We've no director of football, we've no technical director, we've the structures aren't in place, which they need to be for a club of our size, and in particular for a club of our size to get better in the Champions League, as well as keeping our domestic success going. So yeah, I think obviously I don't want to be too negative, but there needs to be kind of the club needs to be reshaped, in my opinion, and they need to become in touch with modern football, because at the moment we're just not. And until we do that, it's just going to be kind of the same cycle of, in particular, Mark Lawwell. If Mark Lawwell stays, I don't think anyone can say that the signings are going to get any better from the amount of signings that we've made that have not worked out.
No, without a doubt. Now, we do have a new contributor to the Acsom team. And because it's obviously the first time that Chris has been on the show, there's been a few technical glitches. That's exactly what happens. And that, you never, ever think for a moment that these things will go without any kind of glitches. We're going to try and bring Chris in. If it doesn't work out this time, we'll sort it out for next week. But Chris, are you able to hear us? Can you respond and let us know you want to talk about Celtic?
Yes, I can hear you, Paul John. Can you hear me?
Brilliant. Superb. We're rocking. We're cooking with gas. You've came in at the right time, Chris. I mean, just as a wee point to anybody who gets involved in the chat, and by the way, you get to know the avatars, you get to know the names. Chris has been commenting on a regular, would I say a daily basis for some time, actually, Chris, to the point where I was like, you know what? Maybe you should just come on the show. This is going to be a good time for you just to jump from that comment section onto the screen. Welcome everybody. What's your avatar? What's your pseudonym? Is it Double Denim, isn't it? Double Denim.
You know, I was going to actually wear the double denim today. I thought that'd be too on the nose. And plus, the only downside with denim is it's blue, right? And I thought I just can't do that for my first show. But yeah, listen, it's typical, isn't it? Post deadline day, new signing, and everybody, I'm probably the biggest new signing we've had. Let's be honest, after this window, that's we know you've had a fairly tragic deadline day. But listen, I'll try and do the usual post deadline day signing spiel here. So first of all, really delighted to be on Acsom. It's the biggest podcast out there. There were lots of other podcasts interested, but when I saw Acsom was interested, that was the choice.
The only podcast you ever wanted to be with.
Absolutely.
Love it.
I hope I'll be here for at least five years, and we'll have a lot of success together. So that's the usual deadline day signing spiel. But no, I certainly hope Adam Ida has a better debut than me trying to get connected on here. So apologies for the delay, but yeah, really looking forward to being part of a show. And as you say, I know a lot of the guys on the chat. I also know how merciless they can be, so I'm hoping they'll go easy on me today and going forward.
It's part of the fun, Chris. It's part of the fun. And I think the social media thing as well, it's important to have an opinion, absolutely try and keep it balanced. But it's also important to try and hear the views of others. And that's where the comment section is so valuable to us. And I think also on the social media aspect, there's a lot of obviously toxicity, particularly on the X platform. I don't see as much of that on things like Facebook, although the Facebook groups can get a bit grisly at times. So welcome, Chris, to the show. We are going to be talking all things Celtic today. It's the day after the night before. We've been talking to Adam Ida, and James, based in Ireland, has been giving us the kind of lowdown on his early part of his career.
Yeah.
And my take on it, listen, if it's Colin Kazim Richards, if it's Carlton Cole, I welcome them to Celtic. I hope they do well. Some disappoint you, some surprise you. Right, I'm not writing anybody off. I think I'm looking more at an overview how we're doing business at the moment. The fact that we've got a club who are so stubborn in their approach, I think they're antiquated in their approach, whereby I'll get people in that I like rather than people that can do the job. And that for me, that favouritism, that nepotism, something that we've touched on. What I wanted in this particular window, Chris, was for Brendan Rodgers to grab it by the scruff of the neck.
Yeah.
And to have that control. I know people in the comments might say, listen, if you give Brendan control, he'll sign Nat Phillips. I get it. But you've got to have the manager with a level of control. Otherwise, the players that you present him with might not play. And I posted this other day, from the summer, had it not been for Carter Vickers getting injured, Lagerberg was out the door, Tillio was out the door, Kwon was out the door. There's three other players who have not played more than 900 minutes. And then what you're left with? You're left with Bernardo, who's just recently come into the side, Palmer, and Yang. Yang's played over 900 minutes. So it's been a disaster of a summer transfer window, no doubt, but it goes deeper than that. Even when you look at the quality that we lost from last season's team, of the 5 players that left the building, Giakoumakis, Juranovic, Starfelt, Jota, and Moy, it's almost like the words of a song. They just roll off the tongue. I've said it that often. The only one that came in under Mark Lawwell's watch was Moy. But there's no way I'm giving Mark Lawwell credit for that. That's an and signing every day of the week, right? Yeah. So the quality that we've lost has been replaced by quantity. That's the issue. We lose Jota, we bring in 4 wingers. And we need to have an overhaul, Chris. Is it doable at a club like Celtic when we're structured the way we are?
Yeah, look, I think it was interesting last night where there was a bit of a comparison between the 2 windows, the summer window and the January window, and which one was worse and for what reason. And I think the problem was that we look at the summer window, we had extensive recruitment, we brought in a lot of players, but they were all, and there's that word again, the project signing, right? They were all largely project signing. There wasn't many of them you'd look at and point and say, yep, they're going to come in and actually tangibly improve on a championship winning team. Or even come in and replace some of the guys we lost, like Jota, Moy, Giakoumakis, etc. I think the summer was a catalyst, and I think there's a little bit of leeway towards the manager because he was just coming in. I think I get the impression some of those signings were in the pipeline already. Maybe he had an element of approval, not 100% sure. But I think the opportunity in January to rectify some of that, and we've heard Brendan, talk. It's been referenced to death, talking about 4 quality signings. So what is quality, right? What does quality represent? Is quality someone that's going to come in and make a difference 2 years down the line? Or is quality someone that's going to come in and make a massive difference straight away to the team? Now, for me, I view it as the latter. I think that quality should be someone that can come in and make a tangible, material difference to that first team. Come in, not necessarily hit the ground running, but come in and really look like you can make a contribution, either whether it be through assist, through really hardening defence, or being that goal scoring machine up front. So while I think the summer was kind of a catalyst for what's now happened, I think there was such a missed opportunity in January to rectify that. Getting some players out on loan could be viewed as a success. David Turnbull going, probably the right decision, getting 2 million in for him. But listen, we all talk about the recruitment strategy, and we talk about this element of bringing players in to, maximise their profit and their sale-on value and get some value on the field. And look, we've had a bit of success with Jota, with Matt O'Reilly will probably eventually fall into that category. But for me, the whole purpose of having that model is you get yourself to a point of financial stability where actually you don't really need to do that anymore. You can actually go out and really speculate in terms of investing in a player. And we haven't really done that. Again, our biggest signing is Kuhn, who could very well become good, could be, Jota, Mark II, for example, depending on we see more of them. But 3 million out of, when we've been selling players for 25 million, it's just, I get the reason why we're seeing words like underwhelming, desperation, ineffective, same old, same old. I get the frustration on the socials and throughout the fan groups on that. So yeah, for me, I think summer pretty much a disaster, but I think it's compounded by what we've seen in January.
Right. Well, with regards to the, I don't know if Red Scotland's saying that I have a head like a Dorito. I'm not quite sure who you're talking about. Right. What I would point out, everybody's entitled to their opinion on podcasts. What we have celebrated just recently is heading towards 15 million views on YouTube. No other Celtic podcast on the planet has done it. So we have a right good community of people tuning in to watch a Celtic State of Mind. And we appreciate every single one of them coming in. Obviously, you can come and do other things with Acsom. You can come and see us live as well, fully produced videos on the channel every single week, at least once a week. And yeah, as I say, everybody within the fan base is entitled to their opinion. What we try and do is get as many contributors as possible. Hence the reason Chris is on the show. And I think we now have over 20 voices on Acsom, which is important because we need to have a good cross-section of the fan views on here. There's no script. Chris, you were sent nothing before you appeared on here. There is no script whatsoever.
Just a list of initiations, and I've got to do your laundry for a week. The guy sent me for a tin of tartan paint and a left-handed paintbrush. And
absolutely. Absolutely. That goes without saying. We're talking here about recruitment, and I think that when you look down the history of Celtic, and I last week had the absolute pleasure of being in the presence of, in my view, because it's all about opinions, the best Celtic manager of my lifetime. I was born in 1978, and I think Martin O'Neill so far has been the best manager I've seen at Celtic Football Club. He's the only manager that made me believe we could do something in Europe, for example. And I know that Gordon Strachan had successes and Neil Lennon had successes in Europe, but under O'Neill, I believed we could win a European trophy. I've never felt like that since, unfortunately. But people point to the way he was backed and the fact that obviously he came from the English game. It was the only game he knew, since joining Nottingham Forest as a kid from Distillery. He had been based in English football. He primarily bought from the English game. I know there was Juice Valharin and Bobo Baldi, etc. But generally, he bought from the market that he knew. It was an expensive market. The players didn't really have any selling value if you think about it. Hearts and Thompson. Who else? Chris Sutton. Neil Lennon. We didn't make money off of Martin O'Neill signings, did we? So we approached it differently. And the players he brought in were on big wages as well. But the point I keep coming back to is we had a much smaller squad. If you look at the season that Martin O'Neill comes in, he wins the treble in his first campaign, unbelievable. I think only 18 players played 20 or more games for Celtic in that season. So we had a smaller squad, bigger wages per player, smaller squad, quality over quantity. And then in the aftermath of that, you've got a period of downsizing. Gordon Strachan done a remarkable job with much lesser funds. He really did. Probably scouring different markets helped him, bringing in Boric and Nakamura and that kind of thing. Douay probably didn't work as well for Gordon Strachan. But what happened there is that for a period, not even 5 years under O'Neill, probably for a period of 2 or 3 years, we spent big. And then there was a period of consolidation after that where we had to tighten our belts, etc. And every so often, I think you're in a cycle where you need to do that. You need to put your money on the pitch rather than stockpile it in the bank. And at this moment in time, 2 factors. The first one, we have a real challenge. That's massive. We have a real challenge. The second one, the Champions League format. If we don't get into the Champions League groups, next season as champions of Scotland, then the financial swing the other way is huge. It's a game changer. So if there was ever a season to do that, and I don't mean buying 5 players at 10 million quid each. What I'm saying is, we've brought in 11. Why not bring in the 5? Why not replace the 5 guys of quality that we lost last season, like for like? And if every signing is as big as Jota and Carter Vickers or Chris Jullien or Odsonne Edouard, absolutely invest in those guys and bring 5 of them in instead of 11. James, that seems simplistic, but surely that could have been done.
Yeah, in particular when you're kind of touching on how big a season this one is in terms of the Champions League qualification. Like, it's the first time ever first time in a good few years that sorry, we've a serious challenge on our hands at Rangers. And they've obviously went and invested this window with view to trying to win the league and kind of battle back some of that Champions League prize money next year. And I think in particular this January, you can say what you want kind of about the summer transfer window. I think they probably know themselves that it was an ultimate failure, but this January transfer window, like Chris was saying, there was a real chance to kind of rectify it and bring in a couple of guys. I don't think we're talking about huge fees here, but really try and invest into that squad and make sure that we kind of have all bases covered if we do get injuries and stuff, just to give us the maximum opportunity to go win the league and get Champions League football again. And I just think they obviously haven't done that, and it is baffling. Like, in terms of, you're kind of putting the league up to chance now in terms of, if you compare kind of squad quality with ourselves and Rangers, it is very even, and in particular just depth with ourselves. Obviously, our left back is the glaring issue with Taylor. Not bringing in a left back, I think, is just gross negligence, to be honest. Not bringing in a left back or a goalkeeper in the last two windows is, I don't even know what to call it. It's madness, to be honest. The two most glaring weaknesses in the team not being addressed, two windows in a row, is just kind of utter gross negligence, as I said. But yeah, I think it's really brave decision by the board. Well, not brave, a stupid decision by the board to not invest into this team heading into the last few months of the season, just with what's on offer and kind of how Rangers have invested and how the gap is not as big as it was last season.
Yeah. Now, what you'll find very quickly, Chris, is there is no hiding place on Acsom. You will have people who come in and view it every single day, but still come in and say, oh, by the way, you're only my fourth favourite Celtic podcast. That's fine. I can take that on my chin. Thankfully, not my chins. I've been watching what I've been doing since the turn of the year. Now, James has an inbuilt fan in his laptop that obviously cools it down. And the amount of people that are coming on telling him to switch the Hoover off, or maybe his mum's doing the laundry. There's a bit of drilling going on.
I thought it was Lewis Hamilton doing laps.
Maybe a bit of peloton bike going off, or maybe even a wash machine. There is no hiding place, Chris. This is the point on Acsom. Absolutely none whatsoever. But yeah, I mean, people, it's not a knee-jerk reaction, right? Because if you look at where we've been in the near history as a football club, Chris, people will point to quadruple treble, 9 in a row, etc. Absolutely, right? Treble last season. But there comes a point when you think, what's next for Celtic? Because even if, and James mentioned earlier, going backwards, even if you stand still, you're going backwards. If you've got a challenger, and this season we do. The challenger, 3 seasons ago, showed their hand that they were a challenger. They won the league. They stopped us from winning 10 league titles in a row. And I think there's a complacency, Chris, right? We don't generally talk about Rangers as a rule. Why would we? There's enough to talk about at Celtic. I like to look at our own backyard and sort out the issues that we have as a football club. But they are our main challenger. And it's all about, this January transfer window, because of the nature of the last one, had to be right. Every player that came in had to fill those gaps. And I don't think we've done that. Particularly, goalkeeper and left back's been an issue for long enough. We tried to address the issue with Siegrist and Bernabe. That's how long this has been an issue, Chris. Yeah. And what I'm asking, and the question is on there, and it's not going to be very popular with the club, who don't like us to go studs up. But listen, at the end of the day, Chris, it's about opinions, isn't it? Yeah. Where do we go from here? Because it's not working. It's not just one window. It's 4 windows now where we've not been bringing in the same level of quality. Kobayashi, I was waiting on a tweet last night about the whereabouts of Kobayashi. Where is he? And what does the future hold? I'll tell you, he's not going to be at Celtic Park. James McCarthy. We get offered an out on James McCarthy where someone is willing to pay something of his wages. Get him out and play football for 6 months. No, what we'll do, right, we'll keep him here and pay him 100% of his wages, and he'll play for the B team now and again. Something has to be done. What can be done, though, Chris? This is the big question.
Yeah, you know, it's an interesting one because, and look, I get it, right? In the last 10, 15 years, etc., we've been really spoiled in terms of on-field success with the odd exceptional season here and there, and we always seem to drop it when there's the most at stake, a la 10 in a row or this season potentially with the Champions League money on offer. But look, I remember back to when the other team, you know, when Rangers were doing the 9 in a row and during the 90s, and we had who I think is one of the best managers we've ever had in terms of his profile and his commitment to the club and actually style of football, and Tommy Burns. And I thought, you know, for the 3 seasons he was there, I thought we played some of the best football we'd ever seen, and that was the era I was growing up in. So, you know, going to the games, even though we weren't top in the league, the football on offer was incredible. And actually, there was I think maybe partly due to Tommy, partly due to the football on offer, there was an element of forgiveness within the fans for not winning or not taking the titles off Rangers. Obviously, that came to a head. We then, you know, brought in Wim Jansen. We stopped them getting the 10. You know, discovered or brought in Henrik Larsson and you know, started to build the success towards the Martin O'Neill years, where really we took off with that domestic dominance. But I think the thing is, when you get success, you've got to build on it, right? You set the foundations and you set the benchmark, right? And you've got to then build on that. And look, how do you measure progress? But winning the league every year is great, but you know, we can only go so far. You can't go higher than first position. You can build up your points gap to your nearest rival, which more often than not is going to be Rangers. But I think we need to start looking at, okay, how else can we measure our progress? Well, we've got Europe, right? We've got the Champions League. Now, nobody's saying we're going to go in and win the Champions League. We're not in that position. We're not fishing in that market for players the way, you know, the Man Cities and the Real Madrids and Juventus are, for example. But what we want to be is competitive. We don't want to be the whipping boys in the Champions League either. We want to qualify consistently. We want to get into the group stage. We want to get a couple of wins. Maybe the shorter term progress is getting into the Europa League and doing a strong run through to the later stages, maybe even a final to the Europa League, but trying to build towards becoming an established competitive group team within the Champions League. Maybe getting back to the days of Strachan and Lennon, where we actually get to the last 16. I think at the moment it's just slipping away from us because we're just a bit stagnant. We're a bit stale in recruitment and the transfer model. I think you're right. What we shouldn't be doing is stockpiling players. What we should be doing is trying to augment the strongest players in our team, build the team around them. Yeah, look, we'll probably sell Matt O'Reilly and get a massive profit for it. Me, given our financial position, I would rather keep them and build a team around guys like that, you know, and have that spine of our team, you know, the Cutter Vickers, the O'Reillys, the Kyogos. Just get the benefit of having those guys in there. And if there's a couple of maybe positions that are more easily replaced, we sell them on, get the profit, keep the model rolling. But there has to be a balance, right? There has to be a balance of progress on the pitch, progress in measuring ourselves in Europe, maintaining that dominance in the SPL and stopping Rangers getting closer. I mean, we were 9 points clear at one point this season. We've allowed them back in. We've allowed the door back in. And it's negligent. It's negligent from a recruitment standpoint. You could maybe point to somebody at the manager. I mean, I'm a big fan of Brendan Rodgers. I was a big fan of him in his previous run. But even I'm looking at some of the decisions, I'm thinking, you know, is his heart still in it? Is he still, you know, has he got the backing of the team, or is he coasting to just get us over the line and then maybe take a walk? So I think you've got to be realistic how you measure progress, right? Let's be realistic about where we stand in the football food chain, but there shouldn't be any reason why we can't build and continue and build our dominance in the SPL. But we need to start seeing just measurable progress in Europe. Not big substantive leaps straight away, but each year on year that we qualify, let's make sure, 1, that we qualify, 2, that that we're competitive in the group league. And, you know, if we do get beat, let's make sure we get beat because we were beaten by the better team, but we actually gave it a real go and we show that we've got the quality to compete at that level. Yeah,
absolutely. Well said on your first appearance on A Celtic State of Mind. I'm going to bring this up because, you know what, it's great just to go online and say things, but I really need you to back this up with Recourse 67. Acsom are board sympathisers. Of course we are, yes. Let me just point you in the direction a couple of episodes in the past, right? Tell me how sympathetic we were to the Celtic board on the 2nd of May 2021 when the headline read, Desmond and Lawwell. Desmond, called him by his first name. Yeah. Peter was called by his second name. This shambles is on you, and it's time to do something about it. 3rd of May 2021, Desmond and Lawwell slept at the wheel, failed to act, continue to ignore the fans. Oh, we are sympathising with them big time here. And then we've got on the 4th of May 2021, Peter Lawwell. How can Celtic progress if he stares at the club? All right. So come on, give me some examples. Rico 67. Why we are board sympathisers? Come on, fill us in.
Paul John, just to put some context in this, and hopefully we're not maybe sharing this, but just to frame this a little bit, if you think the Acsom team are board sympathisers, Jerry Taylor, I know, is trying to source as many inflatable sharks as he possibly can right now for the Acsom team. So if that doesn't tell you that we're no on the side of the board at the moment, then I don't know what does.
It's just a nonsense statement. But you get that now in the modern day where everybody's got a phone in their pocket. People just say things, but you've got to back them up. I mean, where are you getting this from? The way I look at the Celtic board is that it's dysfunctional. The way the club is run at the moment, we are the biggest fish, just to use the run with your shark analogy. We are the biggest fish in a very, very small goldfish bowl of Scottish football. And we are, for me, too cautious to take it any further, to get out of that goldfish bowl and make it a bigger club, a bigger brand, more successful, do something in Europe. And every single time we get to a point, then it's almost as if we retreat. There's too much caution. We're dysfunctional when a manager is asking for one thing and then he's being delivered with something else. A manager is inheriting 9 or maybe 8 signings. I'll give him that, Phillips. The manager is inheriting 8 signings and then claiming them as his own at an AGM. This is dysfunctional. It's dysfunctional to have a chairman whose son is the head of recruitment with no track record of being some kind of guru within that field. That is just not workable. So, yeah, we're not sympathisers. I think that is the point I'm trying to make. Brown Warrior, this is a good point. An accountant by trade, he was brought back to clear the debt from the Martin O'Neill area. We're talking about Peter Lawwell. We were 30 million in the hole. We were, after Seville, in a situation where Peter Lawwell had to come in and obviously tighten our belts. What I would say to that, though, is leading up to that point, compared to where we are now, is completely different. We are in a position where, and I'm not saying go and spend 30 million. I mean, listen, we spent 20 million pounds in the summer. Go and spend 30 million pounds. If we are spending that money, I want 3 players, maybe 4 players for that kind of money. We can do it now. This is the difference, you know. And then there would be perhaps a period of consolidation. My point, the point that I made the other day, Martin O'Neill, since he left the club, there has been 18 seasons. We won the league 14 times. We've won 5 doubles, 5 trebles, a quadruple treble, 9 in a row. We've got to the group stages 5 times. We progressed a further 3 times into the last 16. That is the aftermath of having a strong backbone of a team that you've invested in. Rangers capitulated during that period, as we know. At this moment in time, we're not putting the money on the field, and it shows. It absolutely shows. That's why we're in a title fight. Stop moaning and accept it, troops. Make it easier. I'm going to take that, Stevie boy. I'm going to run with that one, because what I'm now saying is we are where we are. Brendan Rodgers needs to basically lick his wounds, whatever he's feeling, because his energy's been completely different in the press conferences recently. And he needs to run with what he's got. And he needs to get the best out of these talismanic figures that we know can do a great job, like Matt O'Reilly, Callum McGregor, Kyogo, Carter Vickers and Hatate when they're back. And he needs to basically do his job now. There's no more room for moaning and giving away cryptic messages in press conferences, James. It's now on Brendan to get the job done.
Yeah, I think obviously the window's over now, and we just kind of have to accept it, as you said. I think if you kind of look at that starting 11, just from that alone, we do have the quality to go and win this league title. It's just kind of beyond that. That is the worry. But listen, I think Rodgers puts out his starting 11. It's more than strong enough to go on a winning run in the next couple of weeks and kind of get the fans back on track. It's just the worry that if we do go slip up, I think the atmosphere will change, or will not change, but the atmosphere will be toxic, which is the worry. But Yeah, I think Rodgers, he obviously knows what he has to work with now over the next few months. And he was good with that in the first few months of the season, where I think you could see from his press conferences, his body language, he was probably unhappy with the recruitment done in the summer. But he all the talk was about kind of getting on with it in press conferences. And well, not all, but most of the talk, and kind of focusing on the training pitch and trying to develop these guys that have been brought in for him. And that's just what he's going to have to do over the next few months. He's obviously talked about kind of bringing through young talent to the club as well, the likes of Rocco Vata, Daniel Kelly, talking about them and how he kind of wants to really integrate them into the first team picture, which is another positive. And hopefully that can kind of develop over the next few months, because if there's one thing that can kind of really feed energy back into fans and into a playing squad, it's kind of these guys from the academy coming up. Just gives everyone kind of a bit of a boost seeing them progress to the first team. So yeah, listen, I think Rodgers will know now he has a squad settled for him. There's no more kind of no more speculation around players. He'll know what he has to do over the next few months to get the job over the line. And I think going off just to start in 11, we definitely have the quality to really go win this league title.
Yeah, I actually think that in a manager like Brendan Rodgers, when he's got the fire in his belly and it's all guns blazing, he can get the best out of this group of players and he can win the league. There's been issues this season that I think do concern me. When you look at Kyogo, for example, and the way that he's not been utilised, and he should be absolutely, for me, be the star man for Brendan Rodgers, because he's the guy, as I say, with 2 pieces of magic against Rangers this season, that is the difference between the two clubs, really. If you look at the 2 victories that we've had against Rangers, both at Celtic Park and Ibrox, we should work our attacking formation, shape, style, tempo around Kyogo. That's what we should do. Talking about building your team around O'Reilly, which I agree with as well. Up top, as an offensive force, Kyogo's your man. Build your team around him. That's something Brendan needs to adapt to. By the way, Jungle Lion, do you reckon the board listen to these shows? And going back to our friend earlier who says we're a bunch of board sympathisers, one of my favourite taglines was on the 1st of December 2020. I've got them all here. Do Celtic only engage with fans when there's merch and season tickets to sell? There you go. And we did ask at one point for an interview with the then CEO, but we got knocked back on that one. So, no, we're no board sympathisers. We love Celtic Football Club. We want to see the best for the club. It's as simple as that. So, if there's a player that doesn't do it for you, or if there's a manager who's not doing his job properly, or there's a CEO that you're unimpressed by, or a head of recruitment, then we call it out. That's what we do. We're football fans. Plunge McNugget, and you come. PJ, are all the Acsom team away grilling Brendan? That why you have brought... The reason I brought this one up is Chris and I, we met at one of the Acsom live events, Red Scotland. Please come along, say hello. They happen monthly, and Chris and I met at a recent one. I can see on your shelf there, Johan Mjalby.
Yeah.
Signed print behind you. And basically we discussed it then. It was the same with Lloyd Patrick Jepson. I met him at one of our live events, asked you along, asked to become part of the team. The way, I've had a few queries about this on social media today, the way that the fan media at the press conference works is every so often, I think twice a season, we get a rota, and you get every single fixture, and what they'll tell you is, right, these 2 fan media platforms are in on the pre-match, which is normally on a Friday for the weekend, and these guys are in on the post-match, which you're at the game, you actually get into the post-match. So we get that in advance, because a lot of people are saying the board sympathisers will be in the press conference today. Now, it's just your luck. It's just your absolute Donald Duck as to who is in the press conference today. Acsom is not in it, unfortunately. Although we are in the press conference to welcome Adam Ida to the club. James McKenzie, as we speak, is in that one. Robert Hyland reminds us Peter Lawwell was at Celtic working under Terry Cassidy in 1990-91. He left and then returned as a CEO. And he was in charge of all non-football operations. That was his job description. I think that maybe changed over the years. Robert Hyland, all I can say about CCV is that I was watching the training session footage, and I didn't see him involved. Now, that doesn't mean to say he won't be in the squad for Saturday, but I was watching the training and I was looking at the photographs from training today, and I didn't see Carter Vickers, unfortunately. Maestro, here's the next point of conversation, and I'm going to ask you your thoughts on this one, Chris, right? So the fractured nature of the relationship between the Green Brigade and the board came to the fore like nothing before, I would say, this season. Obviously, there's been issues in the past. I remember they were banned for certain games. But this season, it all came to a head, and the board put them on the naughty step for a number of games. And as a fan base, if you needed reminded, I think what you've seen during those games where they were absent is what they bring to the stadium, the atmosphere, etc. But one of the things about them, Chris, is I'm not going to say they're anti-board. What they will do is they'll call anything out that they're unhappy with.
Yeah.
And that's what they'll do. They have been quiet. Do you expect anything to... Because we're talking about a message. What type of message, Maestro? Normally, it's some kind of protest or it's a banner display. Do you expect the Green Brigade to be making any type of protest this weekend?
I'd be surprised if they didn't, to be honest. I mean, look, I'm personally on the side. I'm a big fan of the Green Brigade, but not at the expense of other fans. I want to caveat that. I think everybody that takes the time and spends the money to go and watch Celtic, and people that travel across from Ireland and further afield, I think everyone should be equally as valued as fans. But with that said, some of what the Green Brigade do, charity work with the foundation, the homeless, absolutely fantastic. In terms of the atmosphere at the games, I mean, they do generate a huge part of it. Everybody sings in the stadium. Pretty much every game I go to, regardless of what section you're at, people do stand up, they cheer, they do the bit. The Green Brigade just, they go all out for it, and I think it's important to recognise that. I'm not a huge fan of some of the protests generally, because I don't like to see anything that damages the club. And by club, I don't mean the board, right? I've got no interest in the board. But I don't like to see anything that kind of, brings a negative light to the club. Now, I don't think the Green Brigade have done that this season at all. I think what we've stood up for, I tend not to be political, but, what they've stood up for in terms of the conflict out in Gaza, that for me is not defiance. That for me is a group of people standing up for something that they actually care about, and they want to see their club represented in the right way. But first and foremost, I think the Green Brigade, they're a group of supporters. They care about the club, the team, the product on the pitch, winning games, winning trophies. They're just like the rest of us in that front. And I've got no doubts that the Green Brigade are equally, if not more, frustrated than I am with what's been happening. And I think that the lack of communication, right? I mean, if we look at our board, we're looking at our board and we're making assumptions that they're businessmen, they're strategists, they're guys who've got a bit of pedigree in terms of running a company or a business or a successful financial operation, right? So they're not unintelligent. Why can't they just open dialogue with the Green Brigade and say, look, we get what you want to do. Here's our concerns about it. Can we sit down and work out some sort of compromise? Maybe we can support some of the protests. Maybe we can do some stuff outside the stadium where we're not going to get hammered by UEFA, but we can still get the message across. Something. Just be adult about it, and it drives me crazy. But at the moment, it seems like the board have set their stall out to say, no, Green Brigade, enemy. You'll do what we tell you. We'll put you in your place. Don't come up against us, otherwise there'll be consequences. And the consequences could be we're going to lock you at the stadium, and therefore, that hampers the product on the pitch. It, damages the atmosphere. It causes divisions within the support. So, I think, but the Green Brigade, for their own merits, aren't afraid, they're not afraid to actually stand up and say, well, hang on, stick two fingers up to the board and say, we're going to do it. I mean, we saw that with the Palestinian flags coming in. We saw it with some of the banners. So I reckon, there's potential at the Green Brigade, if not this weekend, but certainly over the course of the season, if results aren't successful, if we're not really making a good push for this title, I think the Green Brigade will get antsy, and I think they'll likely make their feelings very pointed towards the board. What form that'll take, I don't know. My wish is that hopefully they do it safely and they do it in the right manner. But yeah, I can see them getting frustrated and directing that angst towards the board, as it were.
I think what's also important is I refer back to when A Celtic State of Mind started to broadcast as a podcast, as it was back in 2017. And Kevin Graham, during that period, obviously, we were in the midst of 9 in a row, and Kevin Graham was pointing out the failings of the board. And at that time, he got dogs abuse from a section of our audience, because it was almost as if you're acting entitled, you're spoiled, we're winning, why are you concerned? But there's issues within the club when, and I keep saying it, Allison and Wilson have got a combined, when you look at their service at Celtic, they've got a combined time and tenure in the boardroom of 40 years. How can you possibly do that and still have a vibrant, diverse, creative board? You just can't. You just can't. It becomes an echo chamber. And then when you get people who stand up to them or make their feelings known, we are just a bunch of ruffians. What do you know about recruitment? What do you know about running a football club or a business? Well, let's be honest, that's 70 million quid. They'll think, oh, we generated that, player trading models, etc. The vast majority of the money that goes to Celtic, if you take away good business deals on players in the Champions League, though, comes from Celtic fans. So obviously we should have a voice and we should be listened to as a fan base. Paddy Lavery, here you go. Here's a nice wee bit of positivity. It looks like the Acsom transfer window has trumped the Celtic one. There you go. As I say, some people might be surprised by what our new signings do. I'm going to ask you, James, looking at the fixtures this weekend, Celtic are facing an Aberdeen team who are going through a sticky patch. Their manager list at the moment, Barry Robson, got his jotters during the week. Great start he did when he was doing it as an interim manager. Came across really well, Barry Robson, likeable guy. Loved him as a Celtic player, a bit of a cult player when he came in. Nothing sulky. Loved getting stuck in. Scored against Barcelona. Scored in his debut against Aberdeen, as it was.
Free kick, wasn't it? I remember it was a free kick. It was a
That's
cracker.
right. Yeah. The Barcelona goal was a bizarre header that kind of looped over. Right. We got beat 3-2 that day. But that game.
I was at that game.
It's an oft forgotten one, that, because we've had some great games against Barca. So we're playing Aberdeen at the weekend. A couple of bodies in the door, a couple of bodies out the door. James, and a few injuries to boot with Taylor, Carter Vickers perhaps, and Hatate. How do we line up? How do we line up against Aberdeen, James? Let's move on from the recruitment chat. Talk about the weekend game. What's your starting 11?
Yeah, I think it's probably a nice one to come back in with Aberdeen. Obviously struggling a lot at the moment. No permanent manager there. I think Aberdeen really underachieved this season for the talent they have on the pitch. In terms of how we're going to line up, I think it's picks itself really a lot of positions. Obviously Hart and goal, Johnson, no Taylor at left back, and I think Frame has picked up an injury as well. So I think the only viable option there is probably Bernabei again. Unless you want to kind of switch Ralston over to left back. And Carter Vickers, I think Carter Vickers out injured as well. Am I right in saying that?
Potentially, although not confirmed. Yeah.
So I think it's likely going to be Naraki and Scales then, centre back pair, and midfield. Obviously, probably one of the more positive notes over the last couple of months with Bernardo's form. I think O'Reilly, Bernardo, and McGregor, kind of pretty straightforward pick there. And then in the attack, obviously got Kyogo, who I know Paul was saying there, he's kind of struggled for form this season, but when he's on it, we know the quality he can bring, and if we can just kind of improve our play in those wide areas, I think we can really get back into the form we saw last year. So I think it's obviously a bad Kyogo, and then you're kind of picking between Maida and Palma, and kind of depends on what Rodgers really want out of the Aberdeen game. Obviously, Maida provides just a lot of pace, and Palma probably with just a bit more quality in the final third. So yeah, I think largely it's a team that picks itself, and I don't think Rodgers really has the options at the moment with a couple of injuries to kind of surprise anyone with what team he goes with. I think it's, as I said, it's probably a nice one to kind of get back into with Aberdeen really struggling. And yeah, I think, listen, if we'll obviously we always obviously know that we have the quality to go and beat Aberdeen. So yeah, listen, I think whatever team Rodgers goes with, it's obviously going to be good enough, and hopefully we can kind of get back onto a bit of a positive note with a win at the weekend.
Yeah, positivity. Michael McDonald, I don't know if you're the Michael McDonald. How many boards are you a member of? I don't know if you're having a discussion in the comments or if that is at me. And I'm also not sure if I was called Dorito Head earlier on. However, these things can get mixed up in translation. I'll tell you something, it takes a lot to really knock me off my stride when it comes to name calling, so try harder. But how many boards am I a member of? I know how a board works, Michael. Absolutely, yes. I have been involved in that level with business, and I'm aware of how it works, absolutely. And I also think that when you've got people in a board who, you know, it's all about backslapping for me, you know. That I always go back to the Ian Bankier moment where he let it slip what his view was, and then you start to think, is this the view of everybody at that level at the club? We can't compete in Europe. That was his view. We just can't compete. So why bother? Was kind of like what you took from that. We'll just go and get the money. And then you hear a comment from Peter Lawwell, we're keeping that money there just in case we don't get into the Champions League. Well, by keeping it there, we might not get in the Champions League. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think that Celtic fans, football fans in general, are very much dumbed down by the media and by directors of football clubs, as if we don't know what we're talking about. And I think that you shouldn't underestimate the Celtic fan base when it comes down to it, because we do not miss a trick. Go right back to those photocopied pages of the Not the View in the 1980s, and I'll tell you something. In 1987, they were talking about what happened in 1994. So I would never, ever underestimate the Celtic fan base. And there are many better voices than I when it comes to how the club should go forward. But I definitely have a view on it. I think when I'm looking at this weekend, we do need a bounce. Because sometimes you can get that from new signings coming in. I do think we need something, an injection. And obviously we've got a few injuries as well. In terms of the wingers, when I look at the situation with the wingers, we went into that window with Palmer, who is dividing opinion at the moment. Abada, off form. Maeda at the Asian Cup. Yang, Asian Cup. Tilio, out on loan. Jamesy Forrest, you can leave. Oh, look, you're still here. We might play you. Mikey Johnson, out on loan. And Nicholas Kuhn as well. Haksabanovic yet to come back at the end of the season. I can see Kuhn starting. I think Kuhn will start. I don't think either will get a start this weekend, Chris, but I do reckon it's time. Listen, Kuhn, you go. My big concern really is about how we deal with Taylor. Who do we put at left back?
I was going to say that's the key concern at the moment. I mean, I think the other three positions at the back pick themselves. You're going to have AJ at the right back. You're going to have Scales, and I would imagine Narochki. But make sure I say that right, because I know the guys will slaughter me if I don't. And it's who goes into the left back position, assuming he plays the same formation, because the guys will tell you I've been crying out for 3-5-2 for about 3 years. But assuming we're going with the usual tried and tested formation, is it going to be Anthony Ralston? Is it going to be, we're going to see somebody coming in out of position to play there? I even seen somebody mention Iwata at one point. I think he's back in training, but I think it'd be too soon for. I think it'd be too soon for him to come in. My feeling is, I think Tony Ralston is the sort of reliable choice, right? He's played there once before. I think he did okay, without being outstanding. He's probably the solid choice. The other option you've got is moving Scales over to left back. I know we signed him, I think, as a left back, but and James has probably more insight on this than I have. But I don't in a position, and for me, he's made the centre back position his own. So who goes into that left back position if you're not prepared to move Scales? And I think Tony Ralston's kind of the only one I'd probably feel comfortable with. Or did Bernabei do enough? I mean, didn't set the world on fire the last game, but he is a left back, right? Supposedly, so maybe give him another shot. Maybe more football will give him a wee incentive to go and play well. A couple of things I'm concerned about. I mean, you talk about we need galvanise, we need the bounce at the moment. Sometimes teams that lose a manager or change their manager, okay, I don't think they've got anyone in yet, can get galvanised a little bit by the change of manager. So I'm a bit worried that Aberdeen might turn up and actually have a real go at us. So I want us to be on our game. So hopefully, if the left back position is sorted, I would agree with you. I think Kuhn would be a good choice to come in. Palma's biggest criticism for me, and I've seen it echoed by a lot of people, is his inability to go past players, get to the byline and get that ball across to Kyogo and get that quick distribution. So funnily enough, at the last game, apart from the 2 penalty miss, there was a couple of moments where he did actually take a couple of players on, bit of skill, bit of trickery, and he got past and he got through and was able to drive in on goal. I think if he could do more of that, it would start to get the fans more on side. But yeah, I think just partly through curiosity and partly because I really want to, I want someone that's got that pace in that position. I'd like to see Kuhn come in and play on the left side, and I think as James said, Abada on the right. And for goodness sake, if we can just get the ball to Kyogo, the wee man's not blameless. I'd like to see him, come for the ball a wee bit more and try and get more involved in the play and not just do those forward and back runs, but. I mean, if you get the ball to him, 9 times out of 10 he's going to put it in the net. So we've got to try and bring him into the game, and we need O'Reilly and Bernardo to keep up the form they had prior to the last game. in terms of goal scoring and assists. So, yeah, I think the team largely picks itself, but the left side is the two question marks. I think, does Kuhn come in for Palmer, and does Ralston or Bernabei play in the left back position?
Absolutely, they're the big debates, really. And for me, when I look at the wingers, Palmer has been getting a lot of stick. I gauge it on socials. I gauge it on the comments coming through. He's been getting a lot of stick, but I think he was better, more involved than Abada. I can't give Abada a free pass on it, unfortunately. So I would say Palmer keeps his place. Take him off the penalties, absolutely, and bring in Kuhn for a start. Stick with your midfield. Kuhn go up top. In defence, I didn't like, by the way, I don't know if you know, James set up the Liam Scales Appreciation Society. He's never said a bad word about Scalesy. I didn't like him as a left back, but there were moments, I remember the overlap to set up Tony Ralston. I'm sure, no, wait a minute, what goal was it? Was it Tony Ralston against Ross County? He set up the first goal it was against Ross County with the overlap, Liam Scales away, in the same game that Ralston scored the late winner. So he can do it. I think the fact that he's got the confidence now of being a first pick, which he has been all season, might feed into the fact that you would trust him more on the left-hand side. The physicality aspect for me is key. I think we need to have more of a physical presence at left back. Ralston can do that. He's a sturdy unit. So either or I'd be happy with. If indeed he picks Liam Scales on the left, it then opens up this area at centre half. Nawrocki would be my first choice, followed by Welsh, but we don't know about the fitness of Carter Vickers. Thank you, every single one of you. Gerard from Celtic Down Under, it's an absolute pleasure to have you popping in. We don't have a left back, so play three at the back with Scales, Nawrocki and AJ. Put another centre mid in. Yeah, I'd love to see it. I was kind of hinting at that against Ross County. At home, against a poor side, try it out. And then you go in against Aberdeen and then Hibs, and you know that it might work. So thank you for that and contributing to the channel as well. Dermot, I was doing well until I mentioned that get Bankier. Listen, the funniest thing about Bankier was the day that I somehow, because I'm a board apologist, I was in the boardroom one day and I took my dad. I managed to get 2 tickets and I took my dad. And it was the day that Sviatchenko was paraded to the Celtic crowd, right? I've still got a great picture of him with my old man. And Sviatchenko, because you've got a suit on, or otherwise you wouldn't get in, thought we were somebody who involved with the club. And they were talking to us. And in the background was Bankier, who stood, and he didn't know how to interrupt. And he just stood there. The chairman of the football club didn't interrupt us. Sviatchenko had no clue who the old guy was. And eventually got about 30 seconds with him before we went back out for the second half. So, yeah, Ian Bankier, he's away, isn't he? So we should be moving on. Danielle F., they've gambled on 60 million. It's simply unacceptable by our inept board. There is no forward-thinking board members at our club, says Maestro 95. The sound of Mark Lawwell shredding scouting reports. That's when young James came on and there was a wee buzz in the background. A buzz, not like the Paul McStay one. Brown Warrior, getting away with it all messed up. Listen, if you're going to come in with a James lyric, you're always going to come up on the screen. And Stephen Sloan, good to see you, pal. How's Brendan going to spin this at today's presser? I'm not a big fan of Brendan. His football is turgid at times, but I do feel a bit sorry for him at this moment in time. We will find out soon enough, Stephen. Thank you to you and everybody else involved in the chat. Yes, we are top of the league. Couple of players in the door. Quality manager at the helm. Can we do it in the second half of the season? I think it's within us to do it. But we just need to remain calm and hopefully make the changes back in the backroom area that we need to make to ensure that the next transfer window is more successful than the last 4. A great debut, I'm sure you will agree, from Chris, a.k.a. Double Denim. Thank you for joining us on the show, sir. Thank you to James French. We'll see you again tomorrow before the game, 30 minutes before kickoff, on A Celtic State of Mind.